Professor of Philanthropic Studies here at Vrije University. So straight over to you, Professor.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for attending this conference. As the first member of the coordinating team to speak, I would like to thank all the stakeholders who made this event happen today, particularly the DG R&I of the EC, Mr. Robert-Jan Smits and his colleagues. Thank you for that. And we had the advantage to have a kind of elevator pitch. We met in the elevator in Brussels, and then it's also personal. It's science, but also personal. In the Netherlands, for the last 15 years, we have celebrated Philanthropy Day. Philanthropy Day on the 4th Thursday in April. Look at your watch. That's today. April 21st. This conference is taking place just at the right time. Philanthropy Day. I'm a researcher on philanthropy, and I would like to explain a little bit about philanthropy. For scholars and researchers like me, philanthropy is an interesting phenomenon to study. If we look at the shortest definition, philanthropy stands for private actions for the public good. Welfare states, from their part, represent public actions for the public good. So, welfare states and philanthropy share the same goals, but differ from each other with respect to operating style, legitimacy, and constituency. From the Vrije study, now we know that the number of foundations has grown exponentially since the 1990s. Look at these figures. After of 22, we don't have new information, but it's still growing. What's happening in Europe is that a large number of new foundations are created in Europe. Philanthropy, again, evokes curiosity and proves an interesting subject for scholars. Why did and do wealthy individuals create their foundations? Why do companies create their own corporate foundation? Why do entrepreneurial philanthropists get more and more involved in philanthropy matters? The first answer to these questions is a simple one. The presence of private wealth in the EU. That's why researchers in Europe, as well as in the United States, are talking and proclaim that we live in the fifth golden age of philanthropy. This answer, however, is not sufficient enough to explain this exponential growth of foundations and philanthropy in general. European citizens, more and more, express their commitment to society. Why? They are eager to realize specific social goals themselves, to campaign against certain diseases, to protect cultural heritage. Those actions give meaning to their lives, and they feel responsible towards the next generations. We are here in Artis Zoo, founded in 1838. We are the following generations. That's what we have to keep in mind. Philanthropy, the origin of philanthropy, the contributions to health, ecological, humanitarian, academic, social, heritage, or energy issues, those actions all preserve the survival of man and globe. In doing so, as a reward, philanthropists gain the highest prestige people can earn in life. That's only one explanation, of course. why so many nowadays choose to become philanthropic. May I add another feature of philanthropy? In these troubled days, philanthropy gives people hope and energy. No, I'm not a priest, nor I don't want to preach. It's all intriguing from an academic point of view. The theme of today's conference is on philanthropy and social investments. And my speech focuses on foundations. As Mr. Robert-Jan Smits already summarized of the Vrije study, foundations are free to operate, of course regulated by law, but they possess specific assets which make them potential change agents and social investors. Endowed foundations are not accountable to donors. Foundations have great freedom in their investments. They are free to spend the money as they wish. They are able to react immediately and with great flexibility to any issues of problems suddenly appearing. They can take risks and they are free to experiment. They can invest in long-lasting projects with a duration beyond national government or EU cycles. R&I foundations may offer support through grants, loans, guarantees, mission-related investments, expertise, and networks. R&I projects are diverse. Some are long-term, others are short-term, some are large, others small. With regard to the Horizon 22 societal challenges, migration, energy, sustainable development, and international competitiveness, R&I foundations are able to play different roles. They can take the roles of frontrunner, long-term investor, broker, innovators, or risk takers. Now, the next sheet is about a little bit wrong because Mr. Smits, you were talking about 10 billion and I was now showing the number the EC is supporting R&I of 7 billion, but it's 10. Robert-Jan, it's 10? Okay, we are half. Nevertheless, it's a low bound estimation because from the EC we know exactly the total budget spent to R&I. The problem of, not the problem, perhaps the advantage of foundations may be that we really don't exactly know what they are doing. That's, well, I say the advantage of being free. We don't know exactly what, but a low bound estimation is about 5 billion annually a year. That's the figure again. And look also at the estimated, again, low bound endowments. Mr. Robert-Jan Smits summarized it already. It's, back. It's more than 100 billion endowment from the part of foundations. So the EU government, as well as foundations, represent to be important players. Both act for the public good and both support research and innovation. This makes this conference today a very relevant one. Philanthropy in general turns out to be an even more important player. Philanthropy researchers in Europe, part of our European Research Network on Philanthropy, ERNOP, have conducted, under the very active leadership of my colleague Barry Holwerf, a feasibility study of a foreseen Giving Europe project. On behalf of them, may I offer you a sneak preview. We have counted now nearly 90 billion annually philanthropic budget in Europe. And if we look at the specific sources of philanthropic money, households, Bequests, a very low estimation, because, for instance, in the Netherlands, we really don't know the total amount, the total budget of annually given legacies to the public good. We don't know it. Corporations, they are contributing a lot, but also charity lotteries. It's a very, very strange. We don't forget, or most of the time we forget that also charity lotteries are important contributors, perhaps, or look, for instance, at the Netherlands. But also foundations, 17 billion annually a year. How do governments and foundations meet? Mr. Robert Jan Smit has taken a very clear position. We have, as governments, respect the autonomy of foundations. But the sheet of the annual budget of R&I foundations, in comparison with the EC, makes clear that interdependence of both players is increasing. Also, the awareness of interdependence will grow as well. The drawback of this development touches the questions which we also hope to address today. How should the independence of both parties in times of growing interdependence be managed? That is the core problem of today, how to integrate philanthropy within the paradigm of our EU welfare states. That is the core question. Not to talk about substitution, not to ask foundations to contribute to the budget cuts of governments, how to combine political democratic systems to combine with, basic democratic developments, private initiatives, etc. That's the problem. Also, how do governments, foundations, and now the business community meet? To keep Europe a democratic, prosperous, and social continent, we need the shared efforts of governments, businesses, and philanthropic actions. This calls for a rebalancing of the relationship between these parties. Our future in Europe asks for a sort of interplay among government, market, and the philanthropy sector. Such a renewed societal contract revives the principles of the French Revolution: freedom, the market, equality, government, and fraternity, philanthropy. This conference is about new forms of financing R&I in the EU and about new partnerships. To end, I would like to sketch one challenging idea on the collaboration between governments and foundations. Well, many R&I foundations currently support SMEs, profit and non-profit. If those SMEs seek funding, government grants for R&I are mostly, bureaucratic in nature. R&I foundations, from their part, are community-based, flexible to react to applications by SMEs, able to review them and to monitor them. If the business plan of SMEs is approved or agreed by foundations, national governments or Brussels Juncker's Investment Bank will be invited by the foundations to invest. The foundations, from their part, can then play the role of guaranteeing those investments as an idea. Well, I promised you to end up with a challenging idea. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Do you want to take any questions?
Not too many.
Not too many. Anyone have a question for Theo? Yes, lady on the right there.
Thanks. Hi, Caroline de Bruin from Sea Change. Thank you for your great overview of philanthropic spend in Europe, especially the number on corporate philanthropy is much higher than I actually expected myself. Question on the Sustainable Development Goals, which are the goals that were announced in September of last year by the United Nations. Have you done a split of the philanthropic spend against those Sustainable Development Goals, and any insights you can share on that?
We didn't do that. I apologize. Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else?
There is a summary of the Vrije study in your leaflet.
Great. One thing that I was surprised by was how few foundations seem to have been started in the second half of the 19th century.
Well, if we look at the history, for instance, of foundations, private foundations, they started in the 15th century. For the people from the US, it's prehistoric. You have to know it.
Well, I'm from Britain, so...
Yeah, I know it. I know it. We were talking about the USA, but Matthew, that's right. You always have to explain. If you look at the book of Thomas Adam, Patronage, Civil Society and Philanthropy, he's an historian, a German historian working in the USA, and he has made an analysis of the history of philanthropy, and he told just the opposite, that the USA people and from Canada, they learned the philanthropy issue from Europe, and not because most of the time my colleagues and we have to explain that we are now going to the US way of funding our universities. It's just the opposite. My university, also the university in Maastricht, where I'm working too, my university here in Amsterdam is funded by private people. And the most important explanation of why Protestant people are drinking so much is that there was a brewer who first funded the Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam. It was paid by Protestant families, but also by a wealthy brewer in Amsterdam. That's the reason that the university is in Amsterdam and not in the very religious Protestant center of Holland.
All right.
Okay.
And one last question. So you had this number for 126 billion of assets and 5 billion of gifts towards research. Is that the total size of the philanthropic sector in Europe, or is that just specifically with regard to R&I? So
only R&I.
And your study that you're that's going to be worked on, that looks to map the philanthropic sector across Europe, that'll be a much bigger and broader study, will it?
I'm very glad with your question, because when I started my research on giving in the Netherlands 25 years ago, and now we are working with a whole group of researchers, the advantage also for the philanthropy sector is it's now visible. And it's an unpredictable effect of research that people become aware that we have a philanthropic tradition in the Netherlands. And it's my hope, also Mr. Smits, it's my hope that if we are able to start with a Giving Europe project, all people are saying from, dear Matthew, why did you start your foundation yourself? I think that it's an opportunity to show that we have a real philanthropic culture in Europe.
Great. We have one last question at the back there.
Thank you, Frank Grossman from Zurich, Orphan Healthcare. I really much like your idea, Theo, of not double checking the basic of foundations or research at least, because there are many brilliant ideas around Europe tackling the needs of our society and the failure of the economic system. And I can give you a very, very good example. We got an approach from the Swiss Economic Ministry of Affairs, Public Affairs, of their Center for Innovations. And to prove and to double proof, it sometimes takes much longer, and it takes much more time and money. And if I really take you serious, I would love to see this coming through, because small foundations, they need to do their work. And to double proof another project with another partner takes another time and takes much more money than we want to invest into our work. Thank you.
I'm very glad with your example. Thank you.
And one more just in front on the. There's one more person. That'll be our last question.
Okay.
Yes, my name is
We're
Stefan
making you
Stoiv.
work for your money today.
No.
Right.
Thank you.
My name is Stefan Stoiv, chairman of the Idea Society. I have a very short comment and with Homer in the concluding questions regarding what you just said about the brewery and the foundation of the university. So first, the humor is, was it the prerequisite for the students for applying to drink beer? You know, just be part of the university. But now, seriously, what I'm interested on is, do you see actually exactly from the donors, from the philanthropists, the topics delegated and also navigated from them privately on which philanthropy and research is then navigated? So what is independent research, and then exactly is this more donor driven?
Well,
thank you.
My answer is always that we are real independent researchers. And I always make the comparison with, if you are visiting a doctor, then perhaps you would like to know that there's nothing wrong, but he has or she has her own professional expertise. And if we are working more with societal stakeholders as researchers, we are asked as researchers, not as, well, followers of business communities or governments, etc. I think that's one answer. And another answer is that most of our students in our post-academic courses are private bankers. And I would like to mention it openly to you, all of you, because, well, my experience is in the Netherlands, but many entrepreneurial people are today willing and searching for public goals to support. And that is it's a real trend. And I think also that I've seen some banks, Mr. Sadelhoff is here from Triodos Bank, and unfortunately not, and we have from the European banks, but unfortunately there are not so many banks, officials attending this conference. But I think if we are also able from research and innovation institutions to get the mediation work of estate planners and private banking officials to show that if we would like to support our knowledge economy in the EU, that it will be given a great opportunity to support the future of Europe. And I hope that this conference today will also contribute to that goal. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful points. And I mean, certainly in writing Philanthrocapitalism, we found there's definitely a very wide range of motivations as to why people start giving. And, you know, some do give very closely to the issues that they made their money in, and others it's completely different. I think it seems to me there are some interesting lessons in people like Bill Gates and also more recently Mark Zuckerberg, who initially started giving. So Gates was giving to put computers into schools. Zuckerberg has produced this basic internet service in places like India, which seems to include Facebook as part of its basic. And they both experienced a lot of backlash against that. And when they then moved on to do things that were more distant from their core business activities, they got much more positive public approval for what they were doing. But I think what the most significant shift has been towards, you know, actually being able to demonstrate that you're having a positive impact on society rather than just giving for its own sake, which, you know, is an important thing. But I think the impact is the key shift. But I'd like to one thing. I'd like to thank you for conjuring up the spirit of the French Revolution in your talk. Certainly in British schools, we were always taught that the French Revolution was brought on in part by Marie Antoinette, being asked, you know, the people have no bread, and she said, let them eat cake. I don't know whether we have cake out the back, but we have a lot of coffee now, and we have... In contrast to what I'm seeing in America, which is that coffee breaks get squeezed down to about 10 or 15 minutes, we have a nice, substantial, civilized European 45 minutes to drink coffee, talk, and get ready for the next session. So we're back in 45 minutes. So thank you very much.